Very good. Let's now continue on reading through the book Kennedy and Trump. This is part 7, and we have made it to page 60 in the PDF and page 52 in the physical book. So I'm going to go ahead and keep reading on here. Here we go. In early June 2024, Kennedy was asked why he doesn't attack Trump the way Trump attacks him. I said when I announced my candidacy a year ago that I'm not going to feed into the vitriol and the anger we have. This toxic polarization in our country, that to me is more toxic than at any time since the American Civil War. But I don't go after him on personal issues. I try not to talk about his court cases, and I do the same thing with President Biden. Let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about them in a respectful way, let's talk about them in a respectful, congenial way, and then let the people decide on that basis, rather than trying to make us all hate each other. Presidential salary. How did Trump spend his monthly salary as President of the United States? Annually, the President of the United States made around $455,000. Trump shared the details with Dr. Phil during their first interview. I did not take my salary, I gave it up, Trump told Dr. Phil. And every month I'd get a call from the fake news. They'd say, "Did he give it? Did he give it?" And when you show them that you gave it, there was no story written. It was just interesting to see. The whole system is rigged. It's just a nasty system. President Trump was surprised to learn he may be the only president in the history of the United States who didn't keep his salary. When considering all the past presidents who may have donated their salary before him, Trump said, "I figured maybe Kennedy, it's a pretty rich family. The only one that may have done it was George Washington. George Washington was a very wealthy landowner." The Musk factor. I believe Elon Musk taking over Twitter was a big win for free speech on social media and a huge blow to the censorship agenda we've seen take shape over the last few years. President Trump's Twitter account was reinstated on November 18, 2022, after Musk created a poll on Twitter with the caption, "Reinstate former President Trump." The poll was active for 24 hours, accumulated over 15 million votes, and ended with 51.8% voting yes to allow President Trump back on Twitter. "The people have spoken," Musk tweeted after the poll closed. "Trump will be reinstated. Vox populi, vox Dei. Vox what? It's Latin for the voice of the people is the voice of God." Sounds good to me. During the 2024 presidential election season, both Kennedy and Trump were getting advice from the richest man in the world, Elon Musk. "I value his advice," Kennedy said about Musk. "I think he has a unique perspective. I have enormous admiration for him. He's been the leader in our country for free speech. He told me one time, he said, 'I'm from South Africa. I was born in South Africa, but this is my country.' He stood up for free speech despite it costing him tens of billions of dollars. Nobody else has made that kind of sacrifice since the American Revolution for free speech. At his core, I see somebody who is really heroic." "I respect Elon a lot," said Trump. "He respects me. Elon, more than almost anybody I know, he loves this country. He loves the concept of this country, but like me, he said this country is in big trouble. It's in tremendous danger." Kennedy doesn't worry about Elon Musk advising President Trump in any capacity. In fact, Kennedy thinks it's a good thing. "I think the more people who are committed to freedom and values that President Trump takes advice from, or President Biden, if he was advising President Biden, I'd applaud that too." Like Kennedy, Musk also met with President-elect Trump back in 2016. Trump hosted a gathering in New York for a group of tech-related CEOs. Top executives from Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon were all in attendance with Musk. Trump and Musk then met privately afterwards. They talked about NASA, Mars, and Tesla. Musk reportedly said Trump was kind of nuts and called the meeting odd. Running to the finish line. Even after all the negative things President Trump has said about Kennedy, Kennedy has not collected a receipt on his political competitor. I'm sure RFK Jr. is saving that for the voting booth in November. What's interesting to me is almost every time Kennedy is asked about Trump's court cases, read that again. What's interesting to me is almost every time Kennedy is asked about Trump's court cases, he ends up, perhaps inadvertently, defending Trump. Or at least that's how the media spins it. It's refreshing to see that one of Trump's political opponents is a class act. Let's talk about issues, said Kennedy. Let's talk about them in a respectful, congenial way, and then let people decide on that basis, rather than trying to make us all hate each other. Piers Morgan asked Kennedy about Trump's comments on why Joe Biden doesn't want Kennedy in the debates. Crooked Joe Biden does not want RFK Jr. in the debates. Trump said Kennedy was smarter. Trump said Kennedy was sharper and far more intelligent than Biden. Trump said Kennedy cannot rely on his last name to get on a debate stage in the 2024 presidential election. But if he does get on there, I would love to see it, said Trump. Piers Morgan asked Kennedy, how do you like being called Junior? During several videos and posts attacking Kennedy, President Trump often referred to Kennedy as Junior. There's a lot worse stuff that he could call me, said Kennedy. I expect to be called something by President Trump. But it was funny because he kind of kissed me and slapped me at the same time. Try to redo that. This has to be a big truck coming by. I expect to be called something by President Trump. But it was funny because he kind of kissed me and slapped me at the same time. Kennedy believes he is bringing in a lot of people who had given up on the political process, people who weren't going to vote this cycle if I am not in the race. The biggest challenge Kennedy faced in June of 2024 was getting on the debate stage next to President Trump and Joe Biden. Biden's team did not want Kennedy to participate. There was a call between staff members representing the Biden camp, the Trump camp, and CNN. Together they hatched criteria that they thought would be designed to keep me off the stage, said Kennedy. But unfortunately for them, I actually meet all those criteria. The criteria, according to Kennedy, is that he must be over 15% in at least 4 recent polls from 4 of 12 specific companies. In 6 polls from those 12 companies, Kennedy is already over 15%, including CNN's own polls, which has me at 16% from May. Technically, Kennedy may have been the only one who qualified to participate in the June 27th CNN debate. According to Kennedy, another stipulation set by Team Trump and Team Biden is the candidates must be on the ballot in enough states to get 270 votes. I will have enough signatures to get 270 votes, in fact, 343 electoral votes by the June 20th deadline. The problem CNN has, Kennedy continued, is that President Biden and President Trump aren't on any ballot. They both have the expectation they'll be on the state ballots when they win the nomination of their respective parties, but right now that's just an expectation or a hope for them. We know how that turned out. Kennedy wanted to remind American voters both President Trump and Joe Biden are the presumptive nominees. So I'm the only one that could conceivably meet that criteria. In a separate interview, Kennedy was asked to comment on what he would expect if President Trump returns to the White House in 2025. What I would hope would happen is that President Trump would reverse his earlier promises to keep us in war in the Ukraine, to go to war against other countries, to bomb Russia. I hope he doesn't do that. I hope he starts dealing with the debt. He ran up the biggest debt in United States history. $8 trillion in 4 years. More money spent during those 4 years than every president in our U.S. history combined, from George Washington to George W. Bush. It is interesting Kennedy didn't mention Barack Obama, but did add Joe Biden to that list. President Biden's done the same thing, Kennedy continued. President Biden is adding $1 trillion in debt every 90 days. Kennedy did agree that some of that debt President Trump was responsible for happened because of COVID-19. But Trump wasn't off the hook. Why did he shut down the country? Why did he shut down 3.3 million businesses with no scientific citation? As you may have noticed by this point in time, Kennedy's biggest criticisms towards President Trump revolves around the lockdowns. Though I agree President Trump is responsible for the initial lockdown plan, I don't think it's fair to blame Trump for states not reopening after Trump said in March of 2020, we need to reopen the country. During a town hall on March 20th, 2020, during a town hall on March 24th, 2020, President Trump recognized the lockdown has been very painful for our country and very destabilizing for our country. We have to go back to work. People can go back to work, and they can also practice good judgment. In that same town hall, President Trump also commented on when he would like to see the country reopen. President Trump also commented on when he would like to see the country reopen. I'd love to have it open by Easter. I would love to have the country opened up and just raring to go by Easter. That would have been April 12th, 2020. So the critics can't have it both ways. They can't say the powers that be listened to Trump when he said to close the country for a few weeks, and then ignore Trump's pleas to reopen the country weeks after. If Trump was the first one to say we need to lock down the USA, he was also the first one to declare we reopen the country. That fact should never be ignored. And when I say he's the first one to say that, the first politician to publicly say it, maybe besides Rand Paul, who probably would have never wanted to lock it down. Maybe I should say he was one of the first to declare we reopen the country. But I think you get the point. So we know what Kennedy wants to see from Trump. Let's compare that to what Kentucky Senator Rand Paul wants to see from Trump, as Paul considers who he will vote for in the 2024 election. Paul wrote a great book on the topic titled Deception. Check out the book cover, a photo of Anthony Fauci wearing a mask. It's a fascinating image, especially considering months after the book came out, Fauci basically admitted masks and social distancing were both unnecessary in 2020. Please add Senator Paul's book to your reading list if you haven't already. Senator Paul follows the origins of COVID-19 closely, using Anthony Fauci's own emails against him. More so, Senator Paul writes about the evidence which suggests COVID-19 was engineered and did not originate from animals in a Chinese marketplace. Paul was asked by Fox Business host Larry Kudlow why he hasn't endorsed President Trump yet. What I want to hear from Donald is, one, that the $8 billion that was borrowed in his first administration isn't going to happen again. I want to hear that there are not going to be any more lockdowns. I want to hear that Anthony Fauci was a mistake and should have been fired. I want a steadfast, ironclad promise that if Trump is elected, he will open all of the spignots of federal records on COVID and let me thoroughly investigate NIH for the malfeasance and cover-up that happened. And that heads will roll at HHS, NIH, and any place else that tried to cover up that COVID came from a lab in Wuhan. If that happens, you still may see an endorsement. I'm just not quite there yet. The host, Larry Kudlow, who worked in the Trump administration during the pandemic, wanted Senator Paul to know that President Trump agrees with everything you just said. He wants to cut taxes and he wants to curb spending. He's exactly what you're asking for. There is a possibility, Senator Paul said, of endorsing President Trump. But I will tell you this, Larry, there are people who will vote for an independent candidate. Senator Paul didn't specifically mention RFK Jr., but considering his positive relationship with But considering his positive relationship with the independent presidential candidate, especially when it comes to condemning Fauci, I think Kennedy is the independent candidate Senator Paul was talking about. There are people who are worried that the response to COVID was tepid, that there was an embracement of lockdowns, Senator Paul continued. There was an embracement of closing the schools, and then there are people who want to hear more. It's not just me. And so, me endorsing the president doesn't bring all those people along. They need to hear that people like Anthony Fauci were a disgrace to the country and ought to be prosecuted, that David Morin, his 20-year assistant, who was deleting emails and getting rid of evidence, will be prosecuted. Senator Paul thinks if President Trump can send this message to the American public, he may gain more libertarian votes and his before the Trump versus Biden debate. Just days prior to the first scheduled presidential debate, CNN stated only President Trump and Joe Biden qualified to participate in their June 27th debate stage in Atlanta. CNN's rules reflected the demands of the Biden team, who sought to make it all but impossible for President Trump's agreement. Home field advantage goes to Biden. The debate is hosted by CNN hacks Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, both of whom fawn over everything Biden does and always have something negative to say about President Trump. Still, the general public is aware and knows what to expect. One can assume it would be Tapper, Bash, and Biden against one of the greatest presidents ever. President Trump seemed unfazed with the challenge. It's nothing new. Every debate he's participated in since running for president in 2016 has been the same. The odds are always stacked against Trump. Why should the 2024 debates be any different? They gave me something that couldn't be accepted, President Trump said when debate negotiations began. They gave me an offer I couldn't accept, and I said I'll do it. Number one, it was CNN fake news who hates Trump. Then it was fake Tapper who really hates Trump, and Dana Bash. Then they said, think of this, but no audience. It's like death. There's two of us and two of them. It's like death. This could be the most boring or it could be the most exciting. Who knows? At Biden's demand and agreed to by Trump, there will be no audience and microphones will be muted until the candidate is allowed to speak. They've taken so much fun out of it, Trump continued. There's no audience. They actually wanted us to sit down. In the end, it was decided both men would stand at a podium. No props or pre-written notes will be allowed on stage. Candidates will have a pen and pad of paper. Thankfully for Joe Biden, both participants will be given bottled water. Biden has developed a nasty cough over the last year or so. Hopefully, this will help with whatever is going on in Biden's throat when he speaks more than a minute or so. President Trump joked about Biden's preparation for the June debate. As you know, it's been reported that right now, Crooked Joe has gone to a log cabin to study, prepare. No, he didn't do that. He's sleeping now because they want to get him good and strong. So a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass. They want to strengthen him up. I say he'll come out all jacked up. Trump didn't specifically say he expected Biden to be drugged up during the debate, but he did ask, whatever happened to all that cocaine that was missing a month ago from the White House? Trump wanted he and Biden to be drug tested before the debate, but it sounds like CNN has no interest in that stipulation. Speaking of drugs, can you imagine the media's reaction if a baggie of cocaine was found in Trump's White House? A Democrat-led Congress would have tried to impeach, arrest, and jail President Trump, even if the cocaine didn't belong to him. Yet when drugs are found under Biden's watch, it's swept under the rug and treated as an unsolved mystery. Back to the debates. The real issue with the debates is the exclusion of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and how the Federal Election Commission will respond, if at all. Kennedy will likely sue CNN at some point, but he can't do that until the FEC acts. Under the FEC regulations, the network needs to use objective criteria when it decides who can get on the stage, said Kennedy, and they need to use pre-existing criteria. What the Washington Post found out was that CNN actually colluded with the Biden campaign to develop criteria that was specifically designed to keep me off the stage. Kennedy went into detail about CNN's revised criteria. The criteria that they're now using is that you have to be a presumptive nominee of a specific party. Today, the FEC announced that that is not a valid criterion. So, if CNN goes ahead and stages this debate without me, it will be an illegal criminal campaign contribution to the Republican and Democratic parties. Kennedy even compared it to what happened to Michael Cohen, saying this crime is actually worse. This is the same crime that Michael Cohen was sent to jail for, said Kennedy, but actually it's a lot worse. CNN now is in a position where they're going to have to figure out whether they want to violate the law, the criminal law, commit a criminal act by excluding me from the stage. And we're going to wait and see what they do. CNN laid out their qualification requirements as those outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution to serve as president, as well as file a formal statement of candidacy with the Federal Election Commission. According to the parameters set by CNN in May, all participating debaters had to appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to reach the 270 electoral vote threshold to win the presidency and receive at least 15% in 4 separate national polls of registered or likely voters that meet CNN standards for reporting. Kennedy has done all of this and said that technically he is the only candidate who is on any of the state ballots. Regardless, CNN insists Kennedy does not qualify to participate in the June debate. Kennedy obviously disagrees. On the same day CNN stated Biden and Trump were the only candidates to meet the requirements, Kennedy posted his thoughts about the rigged debate. President Trump and President Biden don't agree on much, wrote Kennedy, but they do agree on excluding me from the debate stage. They've colluded with CNN to rig the debate rules and block my participation so they don't have to answer tough questions about the lockdowns, $34 trillion national debt, the chronic disease epidemic, or the toxic polarization that drives their campaign. Both former presidents are making a mockery. Both former presidents are making a mockery of democracy, and I'm never going to back down. While on Trump Force One, President Trump made a short video about Kennedy's future participation in the presidential debates. I know RFK Jr. wants to try and get on the stage on Thursday, and I'd love to have him, said Trump. I don't think he's much of a debater. I hate to assume here, but I must believe President Trump knows a debate with Kennedy is a bigger challenge than one with Biden. Once again, Trump is downplaying Kennedy's threat to his re-election bid. Trump is a smart man, and I think he understands he gains nothing politically by debating Kennedy. On the other hand, if Trump dodges Kennedy's efforts to debate him, it could affect Trump's mantra of anyone, anytime, any place. Trump could also face legitimate criticism if he is caught trying to keep Kennedy out of future debates. Regardless, Trump is making a power move with this video going after Kennedy, trying to explain to the world why Kennedy should not be in the June debate, while also leaving the door open for future debates. Like it or not, it's a brilliant political move by President Trump. Personally, I don't like it. However, as one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time would say, at a time like this, it doesn't matter what you think. The only thing that matters is the truth. Trump believes Kennedy has some very liberal, radical, left ideas, but I would love to have him. You will constantly hear Trump say he would love to debate Kennedy, but then he adds some requirements. You have to get certain numbers. Said Trump. That was the criteria. and he's way below those numbers. He's not coming close. So I hope to see him up there someday, Trump said about a future debate with Kennedy, but it looks to me like he's not going to qualify on many fronts. As far as future debates, Trump seemed very positive when he said he'll be there. Trump recognizes Kennedy as a serious left person. I think Trump understands Kennedy as a serious threat to his campaign. You know what? If he is, that is good, Trump continued. I don't really care. Trump also called Kennedy a nice guy, which is always good to hear, especially after the barrage of attacks against his political opponent. Trump was hopeful Kennedy could participate in a future debate because I really think it would be a good thing to have him up there. I'd love to have him up there, but you have to do better than 6 or 7 points, like by about triple. Trump ended the video with maybe someday he'll be there, but I sort of doubt it. Kennedy explained how the polls were rigged to exclude him from the CNN hosted June debate. Every poll we've seen that shows in single digits use the deceptive methodology, said Kennedy. What they do is they ask the subjects whether they favor Biden or Trump or other. If they select other, then they're sent to a different field where they're given a choice between me and Cornel West and Jill Stein. And that's not a conventional way to take a poll. The conventional way would be to ask the subjects the same question that they would see when they get into the voting booth. And when they do that, my polling comes up between 15 and 25%. What a move. What a crazy way to keep Kennedy out. But this is politics. This is what they do. Let's read on. Kennedy has seen this methodology used frequently over the last 3 months with big polling companies. Consistently, they drop my polls in the single digits. Kennedy then explains how his poll numbers jump to double digits when the polls aren't rigged against him. When the polling company does it both ways, as Quinnipiac did, I poll in single digits. When they use the deceptive methodology and poll in double digits, 19 to 20s, when they poll the conventional way. While talking about the latest Rasmussen poll at that time, which had Kennedy, Cornel West, and Jill Stein in it, Trump called Kennedy a fake. This happened during a MAGA rally in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The crowd was hyped for the event, but when Trump called Kennedy a fake, the crowd did not respond. He's a total fake, Trump told the crowd. You don't want him. He's more liberal than Joe Biden and all of these communists that work for him. Kennedy's more liberal than all of them. Isn't that a good thing? Seems to me Trump gave Kennedy a backhanded compliment by recognizing Kennedy as a real liberal and Biden is not. The same crowd would cheer and jeer before and after this part of Trump's speech, but when Trump mentioned Kennedy, the crowd fell silent, which is strange and unique for a Trump rally. He wants to be in the debate, but he's got bad numbers, Trump concluded. You can't do that, right? I'd like to have him in the debate, actually. I'd love to have him in the debate, but he's got bad numbers, very bad numbers. I don't think he's going to ever make it. During a protest outside of CNN headquarters, RFK3 teased Kennedy's plan to insert himself into the June debate. They rigged the debate so that my father couldn't appear. People wouldn't see he could wipe the floor with either of the two candidates there. We have a fun plan for the debate. Kennedy's son predicted his father's contributing video might get more views than the debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. Our plan is to hold our own debate, RFK3 continued. I'm not going to say exactly how we're going to do it, but we'll have the other two candidates up there as well, and then give my dad a chance to respond live. When the two-party system is essentially funded by the advertisers, who are then allowed to exclude my dad from the debate, something is deeply wrong with the way our democracy works. A pre-recorded interview with Kennedy aired on the Dr. Phil show the same night as the first presidential debate. Kennedy began the interview by complimenting Dr. Phil's interview with President Trump. Kennedy said it was the best I've ever seen Trump presenting himself. I think you brought out the best in him. That was my plan, Dr. Phil responded. Kennedy's assessment of Trump's interview with Dr. Phil is spot on. Trump was very relaxed during the interview a few weeks prior. Trump even joked about treating the interview like a counseling session. I hope that as we got closer to Election Day, President Trump would ease up on his attacks on Kennedy. Kennedy always seemed to find something nice to say about Trump. For the most part, Trump has done the same, repeatedly saying he likes Kennedy, but he sometimes pairs the compliment with an attack on Kennedy's character. All right, I think we'll stop right there. Till next time, I'll see you soon. God bless.